Two bald, soul-searching adventurers riddling the virtual landscape with conspiratorial tales, familial stories, and personal experiences. Welcome.
All right, Bald Noggins.
Woohoo.
Bald Noggins. That's us. See, and Mike is our demo.
Just to show we're not trying to misrepresent ourselves.
You're the demo model today.
I'm the demo. I'm eye candy, Chris. That's the word. Eye candy.
Okay, I like demo model.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're here. We're discussing cataclysmic events. Cataclysmic events.
Right. And we got a big storm rolling through.
We do. It hit Florida, and that's where I'm going this weekend. And it's rolling up, and it's gonna be in my edge of town here, I guess this evening, up in North Carolina. But there's other more just as deadly events that are actually nature's does some disastrous things, and also people end up doing some disastrous things.
They're a lot worse than anything.
Yeah, I think
equally
so.
Bad. Yeah,
I think so. So this show we're just gonna kind of talk about the solar flare type cataclysmic events, which almost is a EMP type scenario. So Mike's got some information about a real devastating one. Then we'll talk about how to prepare.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, and I think no matter where you are in the United States now, your nephew, my son, our son, and your nephew lives in New Jersey, and they had an earthquake there. I mean, so these we don't know, who knows what the future holds, but people are finding that no matter where you live, there's always some sort of threat of cataclysmic event, whether it's storms or earthquakes or whatever. But the first one I talk about is just a really interesting one. The second one is more of the cataclysmic event. First one happened in 1833, and let me pull up my information.
I thought it was 1859.
No, well, yes, there's two different events. There's two different events. But the first one was called the Leonid meteor shower, November 12th, 1833. And basically, usually in a meteor, they call them meteor showers. They're more like meteor, like 3 to 5 an hour is the average. On this night, there were 20 to 50,000 meteors. It looked like nobody had ever seen this kind of meteor shower. It was incredibly intense, and they say it happens every once in a while. We saw one in the 90s here in Oregon I'd never seen anything like it. There were probably hundreds of meteors an hour. I can't imagine what it was like to see like tens of thousands of meteors an hour, because it would look, the one personal account was there wasn't a part of the sky that wasn't like either meteors exploding or meteors traversing the horizon.
Clarify, they're not hitting Earth.
Well, some of them may, but most of them just explode or burn up in the atmosphere.
Right.
Because they're small. It's like, like smaller pieces. So anyway, but the big one that happened, which was what they called a coronal mass ejection, which is like a massive EMP, an electromagnetic burst or explosion. And basically what it did, this mass coronal ejection from the sun exploded, and the Earth happened to be, spacing just right so that this mass coronal ejection hit the United States. And at that point, technology was pretty basic. So we didn't really have anything, but we did have was telegraph. So we had telegraph wires all over the place, and it literally fried the telegraph system in the United States. It just caused a lot of problems. If that were to happen today, it would be devastating. I mean,
because I kind of read up on that event. They called it the Carrington event, 1859. And it fried the telegraph wires, also created fires in some of the telegraph stations, and some of the employees that were working telegraph were actually shocked. Not so much killed, but they were serious shock damage. I mean, electricity. So
Sure.
yeah, it was of course, like you're saying, can you imagine something just as similar as that event happening now, where we have all these power grids and
Oh
high,
man.
high wires everywhere.
Well, you know what the crazy
That's
thing is,
why-
you can shield things.
right.
You can actually
Yeah.
shield your equipment,
Yep.
everything, but they don't. And the funny thing is, I mean, obviously it would be a massive project because we're, you know, a big country with a lot of stuff, but it wouldn't be undoable. You could shield but they
Yeah,
just don't.
they don't.
Now
Actually,
maybe they
shielding is not that difficult. I've kind of done some research on it, and it depends on the intensity of like the EMP or the solar flare.
right.
And that would consider how much shielding you would need. I mean, chicken wire around, like say you have some sort of component, a generator or something, and if you can put chicken wire around it and have it like an insulated floor and sit the generator in there, that not at a high degree of an EMP, but kind of a lower level, that would protect the generator because typical EMP or solar flare, it kind of destroys all the electrical components.
Right.
So that in itself could be enough to protect your devices, your computer, or a Faraday bag. You're probably familiar with that, where you
Yeah.
put but if the really intense type, like an EMP, for example, that you're close to where it goes off, it may fry through any kind of Faraday bags, but it's all depend on the intensity of the distance from the event. But yeah, like you're saying, we could, to a certain extent, protect our power grids and things like that. But yes, maybe more than chicken wire, but you could have it in a cage,
Yeah.
technically,
Right.
and insulate it from the inside and all the metals exposed on the outside. So yeah, that in itself. I mean, speaking of that, that's pretty much of a kind of an interesting solution, relatively easy. And for example, I found, I mean, I haven't had an EMP to really test it out, but you can test it by like getting a radio and putting a radio in whatever you build and see if it still receives transmission. If it
Oh,
doesn't receive
interesting.
any transmission, that means nothing's getting in. Or if it's just a kind of or it could just have a disrupted transmission, that means you have some protection. But that's one way I've heard that you can to check to
Well,
see.
and of course, I don't know. You were an engineer in the special forces, right? Were
Yeah.
you some sort of engineer, right?
Yeah.
Well, did you guys ever have to prep for stuff like that or shield? You never.
Yeah,
never
we
worried about
were doing biological type
that? Oh, okay. Yeah, I was
events.
just wondering.
We didn't, I mean, by the time I got out 20 years ago, that was not really an issue.
I keep
It was a
forgetting it was
possibility.
20 years ago.
Yeah,
Jeez.
yeah, I'm an old man.
You're old, dude. You're worse than I am. You're
Yeah,
worse.
I think I passed you 10 years ago.
Probably. But anyway, yeah, I mean, that's fascinating. So, I mean, so you can actually like a poor man's Faraday cage
Yeah, you
kind
can.
of thing.
You
You just some
could
wire.
buy
So
a
if you had
Faraday
like
cage.
I mean, that's assuming this is kind of it's a long shot. I don't know if you ever read any of the post-apocalyptic books. Massive EMP goes off and fries everything. I mean, it would have to be like nuclear bomb size to affect like a mass coronal ejection from the sun would affect a huge part of the
Earth.
globe, depending what's facing it when it happens or by the time it hits. But like they talk about these things, you're not going to, for the most part, you don't have to worry about this, but this is for like guys that are really
you don't. I mean, I had this old oven that we're going to toss, right? And it's all metal. So I'm like, hey, so I put it down in my little barn there, and I put some chicken wire to cover the, where the burners are supposed to go. Just kind of use some of that, not electrical tape, but it's reflective tape, which has metal.
Yeah.
Just taped it up, just kind of sealed it up. It's all. I haven't tested it, but I put my power tools in it and stuff. I'm like, it may be enough to just save a few of the drills or whatever. I'm gonna say power tools, but my generator.
Listen, you will be the most. People, they can't call you, but if they can see you, they'll, hey, I need a hole drilled in my wall, and you'll have all your stuff.
And of course, my small generator's in there also. So if they do, I can survive on drill bits eating
Hey,
drill
this
bit.
is not my hand tools in case the world ends.
I don't like hand tools. I like electric powered tools. But anyways, it's just
Yeah.
kind of like, hey, I got it. What else am I going to put in it?
Yeah.
All my electronics.
Sure.
Kind of inconvenient because I don't use my electronic in the barn. So anyway, that's just an example that if somebody's
Sure.
like interested in like trying something out, like, yeah,
Yeah. No,
give it a whirl.
that's an interesting, that's an interesting kind of a way to deal with it. Because everybody's always saying, oh yeah, an EMP, it's going to fry everything, and it is. I mean, all the
Yeah,
unless you've got an old,
unless
like a
except for
40 or
my
50
drills.
except for Chris's drills, everything's going to be down. The no, but like people's cars, all our good golly, yeah, all
But
the
you know,
electric.
I do have a CB radio, which I plan on putting in there at some point also.
That's actually great. Well, you know what?
Yeah.
That's the other thing we're going to talk about. Speaking of CB radios, bug out bags, but being prepared for a natural disaster. I mean,
Yeah.
like or like in on the west out here on the West Coast, it's becoming like now you better have a quick escape stuff because the fires. We
Yeah.
had fires outside of Salem here, 3 or 4 years ago in 2020. They were so bad. I had friends lose, their houses, and I had another one of my business partners was up in the Canton. Well, as you head up towards the Cascade here in the Willamette Valley in Oregon, there's all these canyons. So we call it the canyon, and it just runs up Highway 22 up over to Central Oregon. Well, he was up there looking for his mom and dad. I mean, because the fires were moving so fast that it was like they couldn't get the people fast enough. I mean, hundreds of people, I don't know about hundreds, but a lot of people died. Whole parts of towns were wiped out. I was driving, went out to the coast, went over to Central Oregon. Detroit, large portions of Detroit were gone. There were parts of Lincoln City, outside of Lincoln City, where whole housing parks were, everything was destroyed except like one house. So anyway, bug out bags are a big deal. Being able to move quickly and even having maybe a week's worth of food, easy prepare. Go ahead, fill me in. What would be the best?
Well,
to put the bug out back.
Kind of you're talking about fires, and everyone probably remembers the Maui fires just recently.
Right.
And that supposedly was actually man-made. There's other theories on it, but wind and electric power lines going down and disseminating cars and people, and so anyways, very devastating and very fast. So yes, it's always have a good idea, have a day pack, you can call it, just something light. You may have a jacket in it. You want a couple bottles of water, some canned food, some matches or lighters, and some sort of fire starter, something to make a fire with, something that and if you have any medication you need. So you want a bug out bag, something that's easy to grab, and it's going to get you maybe 3 days if you're on the road or in hiding or whatever, looking for your parents' house, whatever your situation is. If you have any sort of communications like cell phone, or they have the handheld CB radios or even walkie-talkies, with a 1 or 2 mile distance, and which would kind of go into or a transistor radio to receive communications depending on the type of disaster, whether they're putting out information. If you carry, or you may even, if you have a handgun, have it in there with some ammunition for
Good
hunting.
idea, yeah.
And anything that you're looking at. The bug out bag is really just 24, 72-hour type situation.
Yeah.
Get out quick, stay alive, and then come back home and reclaim whatever's left.
And that's the whole concept. You want something where if you have to leave, it's like fires, or pick whatever. I mean, it could be anything. I mean, fires out here in the West are like the biggest threat now because we have such densely populated areas in the midst of some of these big, public lands, BLM, federal lands that aren't really, they don't allow the burns anymore. So the undergrowth is very thick in some of these forests. And that's why these fires burn so hot, because they have years and years of undergrowth that have built up. And so it's just a real nightmare of a problem to try to counteract when it's going on. We have some fires out in Eastern Oregon. I think they probably got them under control now, but they've been burning. Some of them had been burning for weeks, and we were running into people from Eastern Oregon that were saying we just got out, not because it was necessarily they were in danger, but just because of the amount of smoke. And it just gets tedious after a while, just go someplace where it isn't smoky. Anyway, but I digress. But anyway, bug out bags, and then like having a little stove, a little propane or some sort of coal burning or fuel burning stove that you can run independently.
Like a sterno stove.
Yeah, sterno stove, just something small, doesn't have to be big, just something you can heat up. Having some canned food, having fresh water, just somewhere in your house. So in case, power goes out, you've at least got maybe a week's worth. Go ahead.
If you're talking about EMP or solar flare type activity where you're going to lose power for, it could be a few days or a week. Yes, you want to have a couple cases of water at least, and canned goods, that type of extra medication, and kind of your bug out bag. But you think of your bug out bag, but just increase the amount of stuff that you want. More food or rice or beans. That's easy to store and stores for long extended periods of time. But your main thing is heat, some sort of energy device, generator. Even if your car could be used as a generator if you can plug stuff into it. Right. Or some people have the solar panels where they can charge up. So, just think of that. How am I going to, get power? What's my power source? Where am I going to get drinking water? How am I going to eat? How am I going to heat my food? A good emergency situation is your water heater's got at least, well, it depends on the size, but about 40 gallons of water. That's kind of an emergency. So right there in your home, your water heater should be full. And if
now that is a great point, because that's fresh water.
Yeah.
It's clean.
Right. You probably won't be using it if there's no electricity, but at some point, if the water's turned off in the neighborhood.
So like in our house, we got 2 water heaters. So that's almost 100 gallons worth of fresh water.
And you'd want to have some bleach, a gallon of bleach on hand, because that would be a good way to clean the water. Just a little bit of bleach in your water, just to get all the bad stuff kills off.
Stuff like that. If you don't have bleach, you can always boil it, but boiling it takes
takes them out, and it takes a while. But bleach we actually in the military, that was one of the ways we purified our water in certain camps in different countries, because we had large quantity, where you have several 30 gallons of water, just put a little bit of bleach in each. Not so much where it tastes like bleach, it's a little bit overkill. An ounce maybe to, I don't know, there's probably a formula you look up online, but an ounce, probably half ounce per gallon, or that may be a lot, but bleach is not going to kill you unless you drink a lot of it.
Right. The thing is too, like with communication, have like a shortwave radio, you can buy these little AM FM radios. I think you can still get them. I've got one that's probably 30 years old.
Battery
operated, just so you have something to be able to listen to, safety alerts, federal, government alerts, just stuff like that. I mean, it's just, now it seems like, I think it's smart to do that more than ever, because like even where we have family way up on northern Vermont on the Canadian border, and they just had massive floodings, and they're in the Green Mountains. I mean, it's not like they're in the lower flatlands. I mean, flooding can happen. Mm-hmm. They had some years ago, they had some really awful ice storms. Ice storms can bring down power lines quicker than anything. I mean, a good ice storm will destroy the power lines. You won't, there'll be parts of your area or wherever these storms hit that don't have power for weeks on end. So, little power, they have these little power stations now. They're a couple $100. They're like a little generator that you can plug into, and it's got lithium ion batteries in it, and it'll last for, it'll charge your phones, it'll charge stuff you have. So stuff like that. I mean, that's a little bit bigger. It's about the size of a toolbox or a socket set. It's like, I don't know, 12, 14 inches, and maybe a little bit bigger. But stuff like that, if you can swing that kind of thing, that's a good way to go. But definitely some food, just at least to get you through the initial few days. We had a situation here a couple of years ago where we had an ice storm and we were without power. Had it been more extensive, we were able to go down and stay in a hotel, which was nice. So, I mean, that kind of, but the first day or two, we didn't We weren't even thinking about it. We thought, oh, we can do it, but
Which is
we
a
weren't.
good point. You brought that up, is having cash. Because
Right.
if it is some sort of like EMP where the ATMs are down, or people can't buy things, you've got cash. You'll be able to get you through until things are back
Right.
online.
Yeah.
So having what do you think you need as far as cash?
Yeah, I think we're getting to, and maybe, as I get older, I think, you have more time to think, or maybe you're just thinking slower, so you think you have more time. I have no clue. But, I was thinking about this stuff, it's just being prepared for, unexpected event. Oh, you know what I was thinking, Chris? I've got a dentist appointment at like.
Oh yeah, we don't have to go. We can go. Yeah, don't worry about it. I think that's good. I mean, our show, I'm talking offline.
Okay.
And I was thinking, I don't know if I told you, maybe like next week do like zombie invasion,
Sure.
because I don't know if you heard, the military actually were doing training exercises to prevent or execute operations for zombie invasions like 10 years ago. They were
Really?
yeah. So I mean, it's just, there's a lot of these scenarios that we could just kind of pick one out and talk about it, research it a bit, for each show, and kind of go
Yeah.
through preparedness for it.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I mean, I'm not necessarily into this, but I'm interested in it.
Yeah, I think people are like, oh, what can I do to just be ready?
Yeah, I mean, just stuff like that. Like you're saying, like the dry goods is great, like rice, black beans, and some sort of beans. We got 2 50-pound bags, a 50-pound bag of rice and a 50-pound bag of black beans.
Excellent. That's good. That's excellent. I mean, that actually lasts you a while. So yeah, we'll what we'll do is every show we'll do maybe zombies next week and talk about whatever zombie stuff, and then kind of be prepared. How do you prepare for? And it's basically the same preparedness, but just kind of repetition of.
Depends on what kind of zombies they are. Some zombies you have to hit them in the head. Others,
right? I know one movie I saw, they were throwing records at them and hitting them in the head with records,
cutting their heads off. But then there's like the undead. See, that's like a whole different.
So yeah, I mean, I think next week could be a good show on zombies and zombie preparedness.
Sure. Zombie attack. We had here in Salem, we had a guy driving around with a zombie apocalypse squad car, and it was all done black and white.
Good idea.
It was really hilarious, and
he wasn't a zombie, was he?
Well, that would be the perfect place to hide a zombie.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna hurt you. I'm a zombie. So anyway,
the guy from, what was that? Men in Black. The guy that plays the bug.
Yeah. He did a great job. He was great. The roach fan or whatever he was.
He was the bug or whatever. Yeah. Anyway.
So what we'll do is we'll sign off now. As far as this, what we're conveying to people is, don't, if you could get a few of these items, have your go bag, have some extra water, have some food. So when a catastrophe does happen, you'll be a little bit more, you won't feel as terrified, and, you feel a little bit more comfortable because you can last for a few days, a day or two, until they get back online. So that's kind of what we want to convey to everyone is, we're not trying to scare you, we're saying, hey, be ready.
Yep.
All right. Bald Noggins.